Hello, and thanks everyone for joining. If you don't know me, my name's Clint Smith. I'm a member of the education team at Mastercam. I'm a former educator at Lincoln College of Technology, and I also have about 10 years of experience in the manufacturing sector as well. And as a former teacher, I can understand and empathize with some of the challenges that you guys face in your machining programs. And so Toni and I, we decided that it would be great if we could kind of partner together to discuss some of these challenges and share some ideas around potential solutions. And I know if any of you guys have been to any of the Haas Automation events over the years, I'm sure you have met or seen Toni. Toni is an amazing advocate for manufacturing education. She's the director of education for Haas Division at the Morris Group. She works with educators across 14 states. She sits on the board of directors for the nonprofit arm of the NTMA, AMPT. She's also on the board of directors for the NCATC and the American Precision Museum in Windsor, Vermont. So I had the pleasure of working with Toni when I was in education, and then now I get the opportunity as a partner to work with Toni in my role at Mastercam. So absolutely love working with Toni. And, in the future, we're going to be talking together with some educators about how we can solve, some of these challenges that are being faced. But, I had the pleasure of listening to Toni as a keynote speaker at one of the national H-Tech events. And some of the things that Toni discussed in her presentation really helped me to transform the program I was in at Lincoln Tech. And so today, I'm going to be interviewing Toni, asking some questions about some of her amazing knowledge in the industry. And so, Toni, welcome and thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Clint. I really appreciate you asking me to do this, and I'm really excited to lock arms with you and help address some of these issues that we're having, even pre-pandemic. But now that we're looking at a new world and a new way of teaching, I'm just really excited to be here today and run through some ideas.
Awesome. Well, let's get going. So, I wanted to specifically ask you, how can educators build support for their machining programs? I've heard you talk about, as an educator, you have to become your own advocate. And, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of word of mouth marketing, and then also like implementing good social media to help promote your machining program?
Absolutely. The one thing I will say is that we work with the best instructors in the country. The one downfall is they're extremely humble. So they're very few and far between that they're kind of tooting their own horn and singing the praises of what they're doing in their program. So I'm really big on the fact of we have to shout the successes from the rooftop. I think a great platform for that is LinkedIn, right? Because Facebook is a little bit more personal. For me, it's looking at how do we start to engage with more companies that will not only employ your students, but support your program. So I'm a huge fan of creating a LinkedIn page just for your program. Talk about doing NASA Hunch, talk about your advisory committee meetings, talk about Skills USA, talk about community projects that your students are doing, and really share that information in a platform that's more cohesive and understanding for business. The other thing is everybody should know what you do. People at your gym, at your church, at your local grocery store, your aunt's cousin's sister, everybody should know where you teach, what you teach, how long your program is, and the fact that you are teaching viable careers and really prosperous pathways. So I'm huge on this. I drag my own kids around. Well, I say drag, but they love to go to local robotics contests, to the local INTMA program. My daughter came with me one year for a Saturday contest and sat around at the instructor roundtable diligently taking notes. And I shared that out because we have to start showing our future generations that this is a community. It's so much bigger than just being a teacher in a program. We're really doing such powerful things in our communities and our regions.
Yeah, that's really great. Such good points. And at all the various education events that I've gone to, it seems to be the number one challenge I hear is recruiting, right? Is filling up the seats. So, how can educators change the conversation they're having to help garner, more interest in what they have available in their programs?
So the number one thing we have to stop doing is recruiting machining students, right? And they were like, wait a minute, did she just say stop recruiting machining students? Yes, students don't understand what advanced manufacturing and CNC is. So stop going out looking for people that want to be machinists and start looking for students that love to fix things. Maybe they still do. Students on robotics teams and robotic leagues, kids that are in the STEM pathway or students that think school is not for them. Because there's nothing more powerful than finding that student that thinks they can't learn or they're not good at math, kind of flipping that script on them and showing them application math is completely different than theoretical. I mean, I know that I deal with this with a sixth grader at home who says, where will I ever use this pre-algebra? And part of it is, if I could just put him in a real world and show him that math, it does just ignite a spark and it just teaches a different way to learn. So please stop recruiting for machining students and start recruiting for entrepreneurs, engineering, capable students, students with really strong math skills, students that are struggling in math, and really start to look at how you fill your classroom. Find the artists and show them how when you make art and metal, it will last a lifetime. So for me, it's really just changing the conversation. Stop going to programs and saying, hey, I'm looking for students that want to learn more about machining. No, I want to find students that want to be entrepreneurs. I want to find problem solvers. Who here loves working in a team environment? Come and check out our program.
Awesome. Now, one of the things too that, the conversation is starting to grow is with the DE&I space. So where does diversity, equity, and inclusion come into play when machining programs are recruiting new students, right? Because I think if we're going to actually solve this skills gap issue, I think that's going to be an important part of it, right?
Absolutely. Manufacturing is a pathway for everybody. I talk about this all the time when I speak with students. It is irrelevant the color of your skin, your gender, your religious background. Manufacturing is a pathway for prosperity, and we are starting to see the tides changing, right? We're starting to see a lot more people that don't look the same coming through the programs. I love locally, we have Beaumont, which is an all-girls school, has a robotics team, and they do really, really well every year. And I love to see the girls, and I love my young daughter to see these young ladies that are sharp, and they're designing a robot, and they're driving a robot, and they're troubleshooting when there's issues with it. So it's not just about bringing more females into the pathway. It's not about bringing more diversity in the colors of our skin, but it's also the audience as well. I'm working with the Uniquely Abled Academy right now to help create more chapters and more locations, and these are for level 1 autistic individuals to go through a 16-week machine tool technology program. So for me, it's like, how do we see the world around us? Our classrooms and labs should reflect that. So I'm a huge believer that this is a pathway to prosperity for anybody. Anybody can be successful in manufacturing. And we need to see that. We need to see that in our recruiting efforts. Community colleges looking at more diversity and looking at more different recruiting mechanisms, going into not just urban, but rural areas to try and pull your students, right? We just talked about this last week with getting in with the future farmers of America and pulling them in for industrial maintenance, welding, machining. We want them for service technicians. We have to look at changing where we're going to kind of capture and pull those students in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that you talked about that probably impacted me the most when I heard you speak a few years back was having an advisory committee that really helps you transform your program. Because, as all the educators know and kind of deal with, is it can sort of become like a checkbox for your program, but really having complete buy-in from your local manufacturing community can really make a huge difference in your program. Can you talk about the importance of getting that buy-in from the local community?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, if you're running like a traditional advisory committee, 20% of your member companies are doing 80% of the work that you're asking, right? It's the usual suspects. They show up to every meeting. They do the shadowing days. They do co-op opportunities. They're hiring your students. They're maybe donating materials that can be used for your program. But I'm really big on activating and mobilizing your advisory committee. If you have somebody that doesn't show up to meetings ever and does nothing for your program and calls and says, I want your top student, tell them no. And a lot of people are like, well, wait, that's industry media. I want advisory committees to be a true and valid partnership, right? If I go to Costco and I put a quarter in the water vending machine and I hit E2, I get a bottle of water. You are not a vending machine. Your program is not a vending machine. If I go to Starbucks and order a coffee, it's about having an experience, right? So if I say to a barista at Starbucks, I don't like sweet, but I like, milk in my coffee, they're going to say, here's some different options for you. So what I want to see is I want to see a partnership with programs. I want to see companies that are showing up, donating time, donating money, donating energy, helping you recruit. I want companies that are going to come and help solve your problems. And honestly, for the instructors that show up and say, here's what I'm going to do this year, check this box, that you're not going to bring in the companies that want to participate. So when I reach out to companies around our programs to start building an advisory committee and really kind of building that up, I make it a point to say, I'm going to expect you to show up to meetings. I'm going to expect you to give feedback. I'm going to expect you to help when they need people to go and recruit from the feeder schools. I'm going to expect you to show up. When they're doing STEM nights at the school and they're setting up manufacturers in the hallway, I expect you to be there. And what you'll get in return is a great insight into the program. You'll build a rapport and a relationship with your instructor. You'll get to meet and know the students in the program, and you will end up attracting that talent to come to your organization because you're highly visible. They see you all the time. They know who you are. So I really think it's important that we start to look at this. And I know a couple of people, again, cringe when I say this, but you need to fire some people from your advisory committee. If they're just calling you and saying, I want your best student, oh, that went to ABC Manufacturing. They showed up to every advisory committee. They did a $2,000 scholarship. They did a job shadowing day for our students. They did a Zoom virtual tour for us because we couldn't get out of the building. Or they covered transportation so we could come and tour their facility. That's who got my top student. My number 2 student went to the company that didn't have additional funds, but sent over a lab tech to come and work with the students for a day and get to meet them all. Or they volunteered for our summer camp and they purchased lunches one day and came and talked about careers at their facility. Oh, my number 3 student, oh, they went to that company too because they had 2 openings this year. I really want to switch that conversation, and your advisory committee should be your team. You should be able to call them when you need something. You should be able to vet out ideas and flush them out. You should be helping, guide what kind of equipment and what you're going to teach in your program as well.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too with the manufacturing organizations, sometimes I don't think they necessarily know where to start. And what I find interesting about it is the power of asking, right? So sometimes they just don't know what you need. So as an educator, that kind of comes back to like being your own advocate again and really getting out into the community and helping the manufacturers to understand what your needs truly are, right?
Right. We had a local school in Ohio that was really struggling with employer engagement. So I worked with my local sales rep here in Ohio, and I said, let's do like a lunch and learn or maybe like a breakfast meeting. Mm-hmm. So we agreed that first thing in the morning was best. So we got together at 7 a.m. We brought donuts and coffee. We brought our local manufacturers in the region, and we literally went around the room and had everybody introduce themselves. And then we asked by show of hand who was engaging with their local community college, and about half the room. We asked who was engaging with their local K through 12 as we're sitting in a machine tool technology program that has an engineering program right upstairs, and not one of them raised their hand. So what we did is we ran through really basic steps. They do a STEM night, they do like a family spaghetti dinner, they were looking for sponsorships, and they had all these different activities they were doing, and we created a sign-up sheet for each of those different activities. And it was amazing to me that GE Aerospace is sitting in the front of the room and raised their hand and said, could we do STEM tours for your elementary school if we paid for the buses and bring the students through? And it was like, yes. You do that for the middle school too? And you're right, manufacturers sometimes don't know how to help schools or what's acceptable or what you can do for them. We have another program right now that's struggling with enrollment. So they're having sophomores come through their program and tour, and they come through around lunchtime. So what they're doing is they're having a manufacturer each day, Monday through Friday, come in and provide lunch and talk about careers in manufacturing. That,
so great.
$dollars for lunch is so simple, but it could help recruit 15 to 20 students that will come into the program that are future workforce for them. So for me, it's, I like crazy ideas. I like to think outside the box. It's like, well, that's never been done. Let's try it.
Yeah, it's so great. And having the buy-in, I mean, it's absolutely critical. So, the last thing I wanted to ask you, Toni, is growing your network and audience. For example, what can you give us some ways to engage with the manufacturing community, and what are some programs that might be available that kind of help build awareness and what the schools actually have available?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I love is find your local manufacturing association. So whether it's an NTMA chapter or like an IMA chapter in Indiana, or here in Ohio, we have the Ohio Manufacturers Association. Find your local manufacturing association and connect with them. Talk to your local Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development team and find out where the movers and shakers in manufacturing in your region if you don't already know them. And also, there's so much that you can do with like robotics teams. So I met with a company the other day and they said, oh, we support our local robotics team and we have to help them machine all the components and machine all the parts. And I said, wow, why don't you have them go work with the Career Center to do that? And it was like a light bulb went off. So, you know, for career centers, comprehensive high schools, and community colleges, there are FIRST Robotics, VEX Robotics, BattleBots, NRL, all of these different programs. What if you opened up your lab on Friday nights or Saturdays and actually hosted those students to come in and meet you and see your program and have your students there helping them? You can really start to make those connections as well. There's also things that you can do with the local Girl Scouts and the Scouts. A lot of people don't know Girl Scouts have engineering badges, they have design badges, and you can actually host workshops for them as well, so that they're earning badges as they're coming through and seeing your facility. So really the possibilities are limitless out there. And think in that STEM bubble, right? Who is looking for STEM? Who is doing STEM hands-on activities? Those could all take place in your shop and be just a great tool for you just to help build that awareness around you of what students are learning in your program.
Yeah. Well, Toni, as always, you're like such a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for sitting down and do this. And I'm really excited that you and I are going to work together to speak with more educators, administrators, manufacturers about, you know, how we can continue to have these conversations and help solve some of these issues. And really, ultimately, the idea is really helping to solve the skills gap, right? I mean, this is what ultimately it comes down to is, you know, helping students find meaningful careers in manufacturing. And again, just thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Clint. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to do this with you as well, because I mean, this is the future of our workforce. This is how we really start to rise the tide within our industry, is looking at filling classrooms and filling them with engaged students that will be our future workforce. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Toni.